also has a real keen interest in housing and housing inequality. But before that, let me mention I've been informed one of the candidates is actually here, and we'll bring you some pictures of that as soon as we have them. Kenneth Nyamwamu, who's a candidate on the United Progressive Alliance Party, and we'll let you know more about him in just a bit. But Prof. Odote, housing inequality, I know a big concern for you as well. I can allow you to pick up where Prof. Omenya left off.
Yes, I think Prof. Omenya was talking about that the government has created negative 140. I do not know too much maths, but I know that that means instead of creating, they have reduced. But I think the question of housing is a critical issue. Critical for two reasons, Wahiga. Number one, the majority of Nairobians stay in informal settlements. Majority. And if you go into any informal settlement, you know these people suffer from two problems. Number one, they do not own the land on which they sit. So the question about security of tenure becomes a critical issue for them. So they have the risk of always being evicted at every point in time. I would like to hear about practical conversations about how will we stop evictions of people in informal settlements. Because a lot of the times you'll hear people say government will take the land. But the majority of that land is allegedly private land. If you go to Mukuru, for example, the conversation about, so how do we ensure that we have tenure regularization that, A, does not cause problems, but solves the problem. That's the first critical issue. The second critical issue is the access to basic services. In majority of these places, access to water, access to electricity, access to sanitation becomes a huge issue. It is world-renowned that the person in Kibera spends much more money on water than all of us on this set. Correct. Unacceptable in this age and time. And I think the COVID situation made it worse. And I think it's important that the candidates tell us practically what they're going to do about informal settlements in terms of housing. That's, I think, the first thing. The second, and I think that's the point that Prof. Omenya was making, over the last 5 years, as part of the Big Four agenda, the government has been telling us that housing is one of the critical things of the Big Four agenda. If you look across Nairobi, you do not see how that housing has been delivered. But there's a third component of housing that I think we miss. I was talking to a friend of mine today morning. If you even go to middle-class areas, go to your Kileleshwa, go to your Hurlinghams, you find that over the last 8 years, with the incoming of Chinese, we have decided to build houses that does not match the services that are available in that place. Places where houses used to be bungalows, where houses used to be 2 stories, we now have the 20-story buildings. No improvement in service in terms of water, no improvement in terms of sanitation.
Some would say that's just a reaction to our population growth.
Yeah,
and trying to cater for it with the limited space that we have, or how do you see it?
You are saying trying to cater for it. They're not trying. It is catering for itself. The beauty of leadership is to ensure that you solve challenges in a manner that is sustainable. You don't allow things to happen on their own. If you go to any of those places, they are close to a slum. It's unacceptable. And if we go with that trend, we'll have situations where people are busy buying water as opposed to having access to water services. So I want to hear about how the person who comes in is going to solve the problems of Mukuru housing, but at the same time recognize that the people in Kileleshwa also have a housing problem. But two other things that I think are important.